You eat protein, you work out, but as you age, your muscles start to ignore the signals to grow. This phenomenon, called anabolic resistance, is why building and maintaining muscle becomes so incredibly difficult after 40. It's like trying to unlock a door with the right key, but the lock is jammed. But what if there was a master key? Hi, it's Thomas again, and today we're exposing the truth about sarcopenia and its even more dangerous cousin, dynapenia, the loss of strength that can happen up to 5 times faster than muscle mass. And then we're revealing a powerful, scientifically backed amino acid, leucine, that can act as your body's anabolic trigger, helping you rebuild strength and vitality. Stay tuned, because the secret to staying strong and independent is simpler than you think.
You ever wonder why some people just seem to age so much faster than others? We usually just chalk it up to, genetics or lifestyle. But what if I told you there's a specific, kind of hidden condition at play? Something that really speeds up aging, hits our independence hard, and is way more common than you think. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on it, and it all starts with one pretty staggering number. Look at this, 50%. By the time we hit 80 years old, up to half of us could be dealing with a progressive disease that, honestly, you probably never even heard of. And we're not just talking about feeling a little weaker. No, this is a clinically recognized condition with some really serious consequences. So here's what we're going to cover in this explainer. First, we'll get into the shocking reality of just how serious this is. Then we're going to put a name to it, sarcopenia. After that, we'll dig into this huge difference between muscle strength and muscle mass. And trust me, it matters more than you think. Then we'll take a peek inside the aging machine of our very own cells. And finally, we'll break down this fascinating process called anabolic resistance. All right, let's start with what's at stake here. Because this isn't just about that gentle, gradual slowing down we all kind of expect with age. Nope. We're talking about a condition that's like a domino, setting off this whole cascade of health problems that can totally change someone's life. And what's really wild, and I think a bit scary, is that domino effect I just mentioned. Sarcopenia is directly linked to a much higher risk of falls and breaking bones, which, as you could imagine, often land people in the hospital. The data is crystal clear. It's tied to higher mortality rates. But even beyond the clinical stuff, it just wrecks your daily life, making simple things like carrying groceries or just getting up from a chair feel impossible. It just eats away at the independence and quality of life that we all want to hold on to. So, what is this thing that has such a huge impact? It's time we put a name to it and really understand what it is. The official name is sarcopenia. And here's the key thing to get. For decades, we all just thought losing muscle was an unavoidable part of getting old. But the science has totally shifted. Sarcopenia is now classified as a disease. It even has its own diagnostic code. Now, that is a huge deal because once you can diagnose something, you can actually start to manage and treat it. If not just fate, it's physiology. The name itself is actually pretty straightforward. It was coined back in 1997 by Dr. Erwin Rosenberg. He just combined the Greek words sarx, which means flesh, and penia, which means loss. So literally, the loss of flesh. A simple name for a really complex problem. Okay, now we're getting to a super important point in understanding sarcopenia. For the longest time, everyone was just focused on muscle thighs, but scientists discovered something way more important was going on. So if our muscles are getting smaller, is that really the whole story? So let me ask you, is sarcopenia just about our muscles shrinking? Is it just an issue of quantity? The answer, it turns out, is a hard no. And this is where our understanding of aging has taken a massive leap forward. This slide lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got muscle mass loss. That's the physical shrinking of the muscle. It happens, sure, but it's pretty gradual. But on the right, you've got muscle strength loss, but decline in your muscle's ability to actually produce force. And what the research shows is that this happens much, much faster and is way more important for how we function day to day. In fact, you can lose strength 2 to 3 times faster than you lose mass. Think about that. And because of that incredible discovery, the whole way doctors diagnose this has changed. Now the clinical focus is all on strength. Low muscle strength, which they measure with things like a grip test or seeing how fast you can stand up from a chair, is now the number one screening tool. It's the first red flag. They might use muscle mass to confirm a diagnosis later, but it's the loss of function, of strength, that's the real warning sign. Okay, so we lose strength way faster than size, but why? Why does that happen? Well, to get that, we need to zoom way in and look at what's happening deep inside the muscle itself, right down at the cellular level. Now, I know this diagram looks a little complex, but it's showing us exactly what's going on inside an aged muscle fiber. You don't have to know what every label means, just see the difference between a healthy muscle and an old one. We are looking at a multi system failure here. Try to think of it like an old factory. The electrical wiring, the fuel lines, the power generators, they all start to break down at once. Let's walk through the four key steps in this whole process. So let's break it down. First, the motor neurons, the wires that send signals from your brain to your muscles, they start to degrade. The connection gets all faulty, so the signal is weaker. Second, the tiny little blood vessels, the capillaries that bring oxygen and nutrients to the muscle, they start to disappear. It's like cutting off the fuel supply. Third, the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, they get dysfunctional. They make less energy and a lot more damaging gunk called free radicals. And finally, our bodies get into this state of low grade chronic inflammation, a process some scientists call inflammaging, which actively speeds up how fast our muscles break down. Out of all those things we just talked about, there's one that is absolutely critical to understand, especially when it comes to nutrition. It's this phenomenon called anabolic resistance, and I've got a really simple analogy that's going to make it crystal clear. I want you to imagine the whole process of building and keeping muscle is like opening a lock with a key. Super simple, powerful idea. So, the key or a little story is protein from our diet, especially the amino acids inside it. When you eat protein, it sends a signal to your muscles to kickstart the building process. That process is called muscle protein synthesis. It's basically the go signal. And the lock, well, that's your muscle cell itself. It's got these little receptors on the surface that are perfectly designed for that protein chi to fit into. Chi goes in the lock, turns, and boom, the door to muscle building swings right open. Okay, but here's the problem. Anabolic resistance is what happens when that lock gets rusty as we get older. You know how a rusty lock gets stiff? The same key that used to work perfectly now has trouble turning. You gotta jiggle it a bit. Your muscle cells basically become less sensitive to that muscle building signal from protein. They don't hear it as well. And just how rusty are we talking about? This is the really shocking part. Studies have shown that for an older adult to get the exact same muscle building response as a younger person, they might need up to 140% more protein. That's a huge difference. It takes a much bigger dose, a lot more cues to finally get that rusty lock to turn. This also explains why the type of protein you eat matters so much. Certain amino acids, and the big one here is leucine, the acts like a master key, or maybe like a shot of WD-40 for that rusty lock. Leucine is this incredibly powerful signaling molecule that directly triggers muscle protein synthesis, helping to cut through that age-related resistance way more effectively. So, we've seen that sarcopenia is a real disease. It's driven by losing strength much faster than size, and it's fueled by this rusty lock in our cells that makes it harder to use the protein we eat. This isn't just something we have to accept without aging. But what can we do to change this? The data is pretty wild. Check this out. Research shows that for an older adult to get the same muscle building signal as a younger person, they might need anywhere from 68 to a whopping 140% more protein. That is a massive difference, and it really shines a spotlight on what a huge hurdle anabolic resistance can be. Okay, so if our muscles are resistant, how in the world do we fix it? We can't just endlessly stuff ourselves with more protein. We need a smarter approach. We need a better chi, one that's designed to turn that rusty lock. And that, my friends, is where a very special amino acid comes into play leucine. Now, you've probably heard of amino acids. They're the building blocks of protein. But leucine is different. It's the master switch. It's not just another brick in the wall. It's the spark that turns the chi in the ignition of your body's muscle building engine. So, how does one little amino acid hold so much power? Well, leucine acts as a direct signal. It literally flips a switch on a biological pathway called mTOR. And mTOR is basically the general contractor for muscle growth. When leucine shows up and activates mTOR, the message gets sent loud and clear: start building. Let's just break it down into three simple steps. 1. You consume leucine and it gets into your muscle cells. 2. It directly flips on the all important mTOR switch. And 3. mTOR fires up the entire muscle building factory. It's a direct, powerful, and elegant chain of command. All right, the science is cool for sure, but the real question is, how do we make this work for us in the real world? This is where we get to the good stuff, a practical, actionable plan to put leucine to work for you. So let's talk brass tacks. What are the numbers you actually need to know? How much leucine does it take to really create that spark and blow right past that anabolic resistance? Well, the research points to a pretty clear target. It looks like a daily intake somewhere between 5 and 8 grams of leucine is the sweet spot for older adults. That's the range that's been shown to really kickstart muscle growth and actually improve how you move and feel. But, and this is super important, leucine can't do its job in a vacuum. It needs a team. It has to be part of a complete protein meal. So here's the other crucial number. You want to aim for 25 to 30 grams of high quality protein at each meal. That ensures you not only hit your leucine target, but also have all the other building blocks ready to go. This table shows you exactly why that protein base is so critical. There's this idea called the leucine threshold hypothesis. Basically, if you're not getting enough protein overall, just adding more leucine doesn't really move the needle. But when your protein intake is already solid, that's when adding leucine creates this incredible synergistic effect. You get way bigger improvements. You need both the fuel and the spark to start the engine. Now, avid leaving as leucine is, it's not some magic pill that works all by itself. To get the absolute best results, you've got to see it as one key player in a much bigger strategy for muscle health. So, leucine on its own, yeah, it can help. It can definitely slow down muscle loss. But when you combine it with resistance training, oh, that is where the magic really happens. The exercise creates the demand for new muscle, and the leucine rich protein provides the supply to meet that demand. The two together create results that are so much greater than the sum of their parts. And you can't forget the supporting cast. Other nutrients are key here too. Vitamin D, for example, works hand in hand with leucine to boost strength. Having enough vitamin B12 is crucial for seeing the gains from your workouts. And feeling like omega 3s can help dial down the chronic inflammation that can get in the way of muscle health as we age. Okay, so we've gone through the problem, we've looked at the science, and we've laid out the complete game plan. Let's pull it all together now and talk about what this means for unlocking your stronger future. So, here are the four things I really want you to take away from this. First, your main goal is to beat anabolic resistance. Second, leucine is your secret weapon, it's the spark. Third, know your numbers 5 to 8 grams of leucine inside a 25 to 30 gram protein meal. And finally, number four, for the absolute best results, you combine that nutrition with resistance training and those other key nutrients. Understanding sarcopenia and the power of leucine is just the beginning. The journey to true longevity is a continuous one, filled with new discoveries and empowering strategies. You don't have to walk it alone. Join the Golden Years Pulse community by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. We're building a tribe of individuals committed to mastering their health and defying conventional aging. Share your thoughts below. What other longevity topics are you eager to explore? Your questions guide our research, and together we'll unlock a healthier, stronger future.